Hello, Strega. My first video, I had no more recording time left, so real quick, I want to finish part 2 on the second part of what I want people interested in growing in their spirituality to delve into psychological thinking. The second part, your second assignment, let's say, is that I want you to explore some old maybe fairy tales, stories, maybe the legends of King Arthur, the poets. There's a lot of poetry on Arthurian times to do with like princes, and these things are nice on a surface level to examine as stories, but I want everybody to reread some stories that you enjoy, whether they're Greek myths, legends, the tales of Arthur, Hercules, all those kinds of things, and try to look at it from a different perspective. And instead of looking at it at a surface level, I want you to find the theme inside the story that will carry it across generations and across cultures. Some kind of theme within the tale that relates to people and transitions that they have to go through as people. It's usually an obstacle that they need to overcome, a lesson that they need to learn. One of the stories that I recently actually wrote a little paper about was a story about two very close men who had died in Greece on the battlefield, or they were about to die. They were mortally wounded, but the opposing side, one of the leaders of the battle, felt sorry for these two men, and he allowed them to be healed, but the consequence was that they were made to be captive in a tower for the rest of their lives. And they had a little window in there, and these men had been like brothers, best friends, side by side throughout life. And while they're in this situation of captivity, they look out the window, and the only woman on the grounds at all is the sister of the man who spared their life. And so every day they see her, she comes through and walks to get water or whatever she's doing, and both of the men instantly fall in love with her, and they're at odds at who deserves to have her, who saw her first, who she belongs to, when in reality the men had never even met her. She's the only woman that they're seeing, that they have any possibility to even see. And so I wrote about how it wasn't really about the woman. The true obstacle was the situation that they were in. But because they were so obsessed with who's going to win, who's going to be victorious in getting this one woman, they fail to see the truth of their situation. And even when it comes down to the fact that both of them scheme and they plot and they both end up out of their captive situation, they're free. Rather than to go off into the world and just get away from this horrible place and situation, they end up killing each other again and ending up basically in the same place, mortally wounded as they were in the first place. And so I wrote about how they needed to overcome the things of the flesh, the physical things. All they cared about was planting their seed in this woman, basically finding a mate, which is a physical need. It's something that has to do with a very surface, very temporary thing rather than a higher spiritual thing. And so these men had to put to death the physical, and that's where they were in the first place. So had they just died, they would have died as brothers, with honor, having died on the battlefield. But instead they ended up giving up the important bond that they had, and then killing each other and ending up having to die to the flesh anyway. So I want you to look at stories and try to find the deeper hidden meanings in them, and how if you look at the archetypes of different gods and goddesses, that's always helpful too. Helpful for me was reading, if you're a man, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be women look at goddesses and men look at gods, but I started out that way. For example, I really relate to the story of Demeter and Persephone. I relate to both ends of the story because for those of you who don't know, I have children who live with their dad in another state. So they went to live with him before they reached adulthood. So they weren't necessarily ready to leave me. So I may have associated with the feelings of losing a child prematurely. And I also had a couple children who were born so premature that they died. So I can really relate to having children snatched away and taken into the underworld, per se, or falling in love with their captor. Maybe feelings that they would love their father more than me, or something like that. Also, I can go on and on about, relating to different characters, but the important thing is for you guys to explore the archetypes behind different gods and goddesses, different characters, and how you relate to them, as well as looking at finding, the psychological issues behind the fairy tales, and explore those as well. So, get to work, and I will be making more videos on different topics soon. Blessed be. Bye.